The sound of laughter echoes through the pristine hallways of Westwood Academy, an elite private school where the children of wealthy and influential families attend. The source of this laughter: a group of students huddled near the entrance of a grand lecture hall, their designer shoes tapping against the polished floors as they point and snicker at an elderly man in faded overalls, pushing a mop across the gleaming tiles. "Hey, Mr. Mopman," one of them sneers, his voice dripping with mockery. It's Daniel, the son of a high-profile businessman, known for his arrogance. "How's life in the world of scrubbing toilets?" The other students chuckle, their perfectly styled hair bouncing as they revel in the cruel joke. Mr. Thompson, the janitor, merely looks up and offers a small smile before continuing his work. He doesn't react. He never does. Over the years, he's grown used to the taunts, the whispers behind his back, the dismissive glances from students who see him as nothing more than part of the furniture, an invisible man meant to clean up their messes and stay out of their way. Bet he doesn't even know how to do basic math, another student, Jake, mutters just loud enough for everyone to hear. I mean, come on. If he was actually smart, would he be working here? The laughter intensifies. But what none of them realize, what none of them even consider, is that the man they're mocking, the janitor they see as worthless, is about to do something that will leave them speechless. Because in less than 5 minutes, Mr. Thompson will solve a math problem so complex, so mind-boggling, that even the school's most brilliant students and their Ivy League-educated professor couldn't crack it. And when he does, the laughter will stop. The arrogance will shatter. And for the first time in their privileged lives, these students will learn a lesson they'll never forget. Mr. Thompson moves his mop in slow, steady motions, his hands worn from years of hard work. To the students, he's just another old man in a dusty uniform, someone who doesn't belong in their world of privilege, wealth, and academic excellence. But what they don't know is that behind his calm demeanor and quiet presence lies a mind sharper than any of them could imagine. If they had ever bothered to ask, they would have learned that Mr. Thompson wasn't always a janitor. In fact, decades ago, he had been one of the most promising mathematicians of his generation, a name whispered in Ivy League corridors, admired by professors, and even sought after by prestigious institutions. But life has a way of unraveling even the brightest futures. A series of unfortunate events, a personal tragedy, financial struggles, and a few decisions made out of necessity rather than choice, had led him here, pushing a mop through the halls of a school where students dismissed him as invisible. Yet, despite everything, he never lost his love for numbers. Mathematics had always been his refuge, his sanctuary, a world where logic reigned supreme and everything made sense. Every equation, every problem, every solution was a puzzle waiting to be solved. And today, fate was about to give him the chance to remind the world exactly who he was. Because just a few feet away, inside a lecture hall, a mathematical problem sat unsolved on a whiteboard. A problem so challenging that even the best minds in the school had failed to crack it. And as the arrogant students continued to laugh, Mr. Thompson, calm, quiet, underestimated, was about to change everything. Laughter echoed through the hallway as a group of well-dressed students leaned against their lockers, their expensive backpacks slung carelessly over their shoulders. These were the school's brightest and most privileged, the ones who had everything handed to them, the ones who never had to worry about things like rent, food, or survival. And at the center of their amusement, Mr. Thompson. "Hey, Einstein. You missed a spot," one of them sneered, pointing at a spot on the floor that was already spotless. His friends snickered, nudging each other. "Maybe he's calculating the square root of his mop," another boy laughed, twirling a pen between his fingers. A tall, blonde-haired student named Ryan, one of the top math students in the school, smirked as he watched Mr. Thompson continue mopping, seemingly unaffected by their taunts. But that only made them want to push further. "Hey, old man," Ryan called out, stepping forward. "Do you even know how to read? Or did you just drop out in 3rd grade and decide mopping floors was your life's dream?" The group erupted into laughter, their voices carrying down the hallway. Mr. Thompson paused, his grip tightening slightly on the mop handle. He had heard it all before, every insult, every joke at his expense. Years of working in silence had taught him to ignore the cruelty of those who judged him without knowing his story. But today was different. Today, a challenge lay just a few feet away on a whiteboard, a challenge none of these students had been able to solve. And something deep inside him, something he had buried long ago, stirred to life. Instead of responding to the bullies, he did something none of them expected. He walked toward the classroom. Inside the advanced calculus classroom, a large whiteboard stretched across the front wall, covered in symbols, numbers, and equations that looked like they belonged in a NASA research facility rather than a high school. The problem at the center of attention was circled in red, a monstrous equation filled with complex integrals and theoretical variables that even the brightest students struggled to decipher. It had been there for weeks. Their teacher, a renowned mathematician who once worked with top universities, had issued a challenge. Anyone who could solve this problem would earn extra credit, recognition, and even a letter of recommendation for prestigious colleges. Yet, despite their intelligence and resources, no one had cracked it. Ryan and his group stood near the door, their mocking expression still lingering, but now tinged with curiosity. What was the janitor doing? Mr. Thompson, mop still in hand, stepped forward and studied the equation. His eyes, once dulled by years of repetitive labor, sharpened. Numbers danced in his mind the way they used to when he was young, before life took a different turn. The students watched, expecting him to fumble, to embarrass himself. But then, something remarkable happened. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small piece of chalk, worn down from years of quiet calculations, and, with a confidence none of them had ever seen, he began to write. Silence fell over the room as the sound of chalk scraping against the board filled the air. Mr. Thompson didn't hesitate. His movements were precise, his strokes quick and deliberate. It was as if he could see the answer before he even wrote it. Ryan and his friends exchanged glances, their amusement fading. They didn't understand what he was doing, but they could tell he did. The scribbles on the board weren't random guesses. They were steps. Logical, well-structured steps. "He's just pretending," one of the students muttered under his breath, but there was uncertainty in his voice. Minute by minute, the equation unraveled under Mr. Thompson's hand, each step leading to the next with unshakable clarity. He simplified complex terms, cancelled out unnecessary variables, and performed calculations in his head faster than any of them could on a calculator. A quiet murmur began to spread as more students gathered outside the room, drawn by the unusual sight. The janitor, the man they had ridiculed, was solving the impossible. The classroom, once filled with laughter and whispered jokes at Mr. Thompson's expense, was now eerily silent. All eyes were locked on the whiteboard as the janitor's chalk glided across it with effortless precision. The once unsolvable equation was unraveling before them, like a puzzle being solved piece by piece. Ryan, his arms crossed, furrowed his brows. He wanted to find something, anything, to mock. But he couldn't. Mr. Thompson wasn't hesitating. He wasn't pausing to second-guess his work. Every mark he made was intentional, every number falling exactly where it belonged. The teacher, Mr. Langford, had been sitting at his desk, grading papers with a knowing smirk as the students laughed earlier. Now, his pen hovered in midair, forgotten, his eyes wide with shock. No one had even come close to solving this equation. He had given it as an open challenge, half expecting that no one in the class would manage to crack it. It wasn't just a math problem, it was a modified version of a real-world conundrum used in advanced physics and engineering fields. Yet, here stood the janitor, a man who mopped floors and scrubbed desks, casually breaking it down like it was basic arithmetic. More students had begun to crowd at the doorway, whispering amongst themselves. A few pulled out their phones, recording the moment, their expressions shifting from disbelief to awe. Ryan's friends exchanged glances. "Is he actually solving it?" one of them murmured. "No way," another scoffed, but the unease in his voice betrayed him. Then, it happened. Mr. Thompson placed the chalk down with a final tap and took a step back. The answer, bold, clean, and precise, stood at the bottom of the board. He turned to face the class, his face calm, unbothered by the stunned silence that now hung over the room like a thick fog. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, Mr. Langford stood up, his chair scraping against the floor as he moved toward the board. His fingers twitched slightly as he adjusted his glasses and examined the solution. His lips parted slightly as he scanned the work, his eyes flicking between each step. He ran the problem through his mind, checking for errors, expecting to find a mistake, a flaw, anything. But there was none. The work was flawless. He turned to Mr. Thompson, his voice barely above a whisper. "How did you do this?" Before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories that will change the way you see the world. And don't forget to stay till the end, because what happens next will leave you speechless. The classroom remained frozen in stunned silence. Mr. Langford, the math teacher, could hardly believe what he was seeing. He had spent years teaching some of the brightest students, but this was something else. He ran his fingers through his hair, his mind racing. This is absolutely correct," he finally admitted, his voice laced with disbelief. A wave of murmurs spread across the room. The same students who had just been mocking Mr. Thompson now looked at him with wide eyes. Ryan, the ringleader of the bullies, clenched his jaw. He didn't like being proven wrong, and certainly not by someone he had looked down on for so long. He must have memorized it from somewhere," Ryan stammered. "That doesn't mean he's actually smart." Mr. Thompson simply smiled. He had heard these kinds of comments before. People doubting his abilities, assuming he was incapable just because of his job. But he didn't need to prove anything to Ryan. The numbers on the board already did that. Mr. Langford turned to him, his curiosity getting the best of him. "Mr. Thompson, where did you learn this? This level of mathematics isn't something just anyone knows." The janitor took a deep breath, looking around at the young faces staring at him. Some were filled with guilt, others with admiration. Then, he spoke. "I used to be an engineer," he said. The gasps that followed were almost comical. "I studied applied mathematics and physics," he continued. "Worked on several projects, some even for major aerospace companies. But life doesn't always go the way you plan." He didn't say more. He didn't need to. The weight in his voice told enough of the story, that something had happened, something that led him from solving complex equations to pushing a mop. Mr. Langford looked like he had 1,000 questions, but he held back. Instead, he gestured toward the board. "Would you be willing to explain this solution to the class?" For a moment, Mr. Thompson hesitated. It had been years since he had stood in front of a group of students, teaching. But then, he nodded. "I'd be happy to." As he walked back to the board, the students leaned in, eager to hear what he had to say. The same man they had laughed at just minutes ago was now their teacher. But the biggest surprise. This moment was only the beginning. Fire before we reveal the shocking twist that changes everything, make sure you're subscribed. You won't want to miss what happens next.